Yeah, I'm going to start by saying a few things about fine art itself. Some of this will be very familiar to those who are involved in the project, but for those who are not involved in the project, this might be of some help or instruction. Firstly, fine art goes back at least 5 years. I began the application process in 2016 with my colleague at the University of Wolverhampton, Francesco Paradiso, who was coming actually for at least 2 days, but he wasn't able to in the end. Now, the application process to the European Union, to the Marie Curie Foundation, is a long and tedious and, we might say, even bitter one. It certainly was for Francesco and myself, because the application process went through 3 iterations, and on the 3rd iteration, when we reached the magic number of 97%, we were allowed to proceed, and on that we received 3.1 million euros in order to do this project. Now, you may think, well, fine, that's well done, through persistence and so forth. But when you look at the statistics for the kind of application that we put in for this bid, it was really unlikely that we would get it. It was in the region of something like 2%, or 2% of applications to the Marie Curie Innovative Training Network get funded, only 2%. And there's a smaller amount of arts and humanities applications that get funded. So I think we need to know this, and we need to pat ourselves on the back. We are very privileged in this respect. So when I began the application process, when I put pen to paper for the first time and finger to keyboard for the first time, I didn't actually imagine that I would be standing here talking retrospectively about what we've achieved so far. So it's very rewarding to be here now at the end of this summer school to, well, congratulate ourselves for participating in what has turned out to be an amazing, rewarding event. It's been very enriching. But it hasn't simply been enriching because we've all got together and become friends or made new friends and so forth. It's been enriching because it's done what we set out to want it to do. That is, rethink some of the working categories under which we're laboring within this project. And I'll come to this in a moment, because I've disappeared for 2 hours to write a kind of exam paper. I've been writing for 2 hours something a bit more formal, because I thought I needed to produce a kind of intervention, I suppose. So I'll read that in a moment. But suffice it to say, though, this has been an event that has challenged. I mean, I know that you all had different experiences of the event, and what I've written over the last couple of hours is obviously from my perspective, because I've only been able to attend a certain number of the workshops and a certain number of the discussions. But nevertheless, I feel that hopefully, and this is something we can talk about later, that it represents some of the issues and challenges that I believe that we've all been engaging with over the last 2 days. And these are to do with the very nature of socially engaged art, its constitutive elements, its relationship, the relationship between art and the social, sustainability, which I've addressed in this little talk, and the place of art as social practice in relation to this wider crisis that that we're currently experiencing. Now, this wider crisis is something I know, based on my experience, that has come up in the discussions. So it's very hard to dissociate what we're doing on this project and this program from this wider crisis, from this wider set of conditions that make the possibilities for socially engaged art even more crucial. So I would say that for me anyway, what this summer school has offered is a transitional moment for discussion about the potentialities and limits, even contrivances of socially engaged art in this current period. So I'm going to move on to what I've just prepared. So it's not my remit really to sum up things in a hard and fast way or present a judicious overview of all the activity that has taken place over the last few days. Such overarching assessments seem on the whole to be tendentious and beside the point, as if there is some hidden essence lying in wait to be captured by careful and balanced analysis of the material under review. Nevertheless, it is important to stress the problems and issues that have repeatedly come up in the keynote presentations, discussions and workshops, and these center on the very terminology and conceptual frameworks under which socially engaged art now labors. Indeed, these problems and issues turn on the uncertain and fragile determinations of these conceptual frameworks. So it is clear that the very working terms of fine art, socially engaged art, Europe, and the independent art space are not givens. This is certainly something that has come up in a lot of discussions. It's not as if the critique of these terms and histories were not built into the structure of the project's training programs and haven't been discussed at length before. But it's clear to me, at least, from our deliberations here, that they have become not just crucial to the individual ESRs, the early stage researchers, research projects and interests, but to the collective dynamic of the research project as a whole. This was particularly evident in the internal program review here on Wednesday that the majority of you weren't participants in, where the ESRs and staff engaged a set of key discussions around funding and economy and the question of sustainability, the role of the curator in artistic labor, digital networking, democracy and participation, as a loose way of assessing the role of the secondments, which I think I mentioned in my opening remarks to the summer school. So a loose way of assessing the role of the secondments 2 years into the project. In Noah, Bilger and Gabor's group presentation, what emerged, do I have a photograph of that? You see yourself up there? I don't think I do, actually. Okay, no, I don't. Okay, you don't want to see me and Karen. Move on from that. I'll leave it there. Actually, I'll leave it there for now. Anyway. Okay, so in Noah, Bilger and Gabor's group presentation, what emerged was a fundamental disconnect between socially engaged art's claims for self-organization and mobility and the closing of borders internally and externally in Europe and globally. And we've touched on that this afternoon as well. I'll come to that in a moment. As such, the reality of sustainability for socially engaged art becomes extremely contentious. A number of questions emerged. Is sustainability a false proposition or dawn for socially engaged art? Is sustainability equilibriumist, that is, involved in seeking a harmonious relationship with funding bodies at all costs? That is, in playing to the agendas of funding bodies in order to carry out the work and to carry on. Thus, what is to be gained for the question of sustainability from a position of weakness? Indeed, in Anna Wai and Claude's presentation, Claude asked what is truly possible from sustainability in a world in crisis at every level, the breakdown of agency, in particular, and the erosion of cultural effect. Indeed, how might new ecologies of engagement be produced under these severe conditions? How might socially engaged art be more than little breaks in the closures of commodification and mass cultural inattention? But if the placing of these constraints in the foreground in the very first session of the summer school, the keynote lectures, discussion circles and workshops have sought to challenge the presumptions of this crisis of sustainability. It has been clear from the work done in the discussion circles and workshops that the reality of the present crisis, or crises in the plural, has forced socially engaged art to rethink its relationship to its own legacies and possibilities as a condition of renewal and refunctioning across experimental practice, institutional frameworks, and the construction of publics in which art is not simply delivered to audiences, even under the mantle of participation, but emerges from the tension, even conflict between practice, institution, and public. Now, this emerged clearly in the workshop that Maria and Jana ran yesterday, Instituting Otherwise, in which Maria assessed some of the key terms BAC have developed as part of its own reflections on the means and ends of social engagement and intervention. In this respect, Maria touched on what has become, across the summer school, I think anyway, a key determinant of sustainability and what sustainability might be. That is, despite the crisis of the social that it subtends, we cannot give up on the institution. In some sense, this was the theme of Carolina Rito's and Elke Krasnick's keynotes yesterday. That is the infrastructure of the exhibitionary, reimagining the epistemic and aesthetic functions of art space, and mourning an exhausting planet on care, healing, futurity in eco-social practices. It is the job of self-reflexive institutions to produce the resources and spaces of mediation that will allow and create a workable space, that will allow art, to create a workable space for itself in redesigning the world. There's Alexei asking a 15-minute question. Okay. Setting good humour. Yeah, it's the job of self-reflexive institutions to produce the resources and spaces of mediation that will allow art to create a workable place for itself in redesigning the world, in the full epistemic sense of the word. The sense of socially engaged art as being part of a wider epistemic project was also evident in Massimo, Marina, and Mies' workshop today on self-governance and commoning. Particularly in Marina's well-defined notion of socially engaged art space as a quasi-institutional formation in the making. Now, do I have a slide of that? Oh, right, okay. No, I don't. Yeah. So, okay, so it means well-defined notion of socially engaged art as a quasi-institutional formation in the making. That is, what was clear from the discussion of her project, Strandbad Tegel See in Berlin, was that socially engaged art practices have the capacity, no matter how delimited, to establish the conditions for a new mode of reproduction. Now, this is certainly the discussions that I've been involved in. This is something that has come up time and time again. The part that art might play in a new mode of reproduction under capitalism, initially, restrictively, but nonetheless importantly. So establish the conditions of a new mode of reproduction, new modes of attention, new forms of association, new attachments, and new affects. Of course, most forms of socially engaged art claim this. My points there are nothing exactly new or even innovative to the area of socially engaged art. But for me, what was particularly striking about the Strandbad Tegel See project was that in Potentia, the interassociative space, or spaces of socially engaged art, can accommodate the work, for example, of trade union organization, civic action, social solidarity, therapy, consciousness raising, performativity, childcare and education, and adult education. This means that socially engaged art is now part of a bigger picture under this ongoing state of emergency. Socially engaged art is no longer simply attached to those traditions and trajectories that define its emergence as a condition of the Western avant-garde, but as a set of techniques and material interventions that has globalized, has globalized and discrete implications or localized implications. And we see this in the terms that Nomusa chose to define the emergence of socially engaged art agendas in South Africa and across Africa in her keynote. The need to travel through ideas as a condition of working through those structures of appropriation that would deny not just the expanding materiality of art, but, and this is the important issue, but art's expansion into the social itself. And we see this changed capacity also extensively in the Global South more generally, as Jenny, in fact, outlined in her contribution to the Wednesday Internal Review, discussing her a fine art field trip to Argentina and the flourishing of a new radical feminist politics in the country in defiance of femicide and a rebarbative violent patriarchy. She talked about new forms of political engagement in conjunction with the growth of new visual, linguistic, and bodily images of resistance. Okay, so I only had 2 hours, so I'm coming to my formal conclusion here now. I think then that what has emerged from the summer school are two things that perhaps we can take away, and we could even discuss now. A continuing reassessment of the field of socially engaged art as a condition of the reassessment of the role of the art institution, because of course, as has been the case with all our discussions in the summer school, you cannot separate the field of socially engaged art from the art institution, even though most socially engaged art has sought to exit from the art institution to find other institutional formations. And secondly, the making of art as the production of a potentia that is always excessive of the conditions that produced it. And I think this is something that, that was discernible for me in many of the discussions that I participated in, particularly in the arguments I had with Angela. Angela and I all seem to argue when we're together. I don't know why, we're like a bickering married couple. But I think, because I think this is an important point to address here as I come to my conclusion. Because Angela always is concerned to emphasize the constraints on socially engaged art practice for all kinds of reasons that I won't go into detail now. I mean, Angela perhaps can expand upon that in a moment. And I partly agree with that. Art is made under conditions of constraint, including socially engaged art. So we wouldn't want to fetishize social engagement and community and radical forms of sustainability when these constraints weigh heavily on what can and cannot be done. But nevertheless, even under the most severe conditions of constraint, art has an excess that, in a delimited way, of course, exceeds these constraints. Because I mean, this is an old theme in critical theory. Art is not conditioned by its moment of production, or it's not determined by its moment of production and its initial conditions of reception. Its conditions of reception are indeterminate. So what might be done here at this moment can continue to be done in other ways in the future. And this is why art always exceeds its moment of production and initial conditions of reception. So I'll leave it there and run through some of the slides. These are today's, and this, of course. I've got to say something about this, because it's lying in front of me. I have to congratulate some more me for encouraging us to make this. It's easy. It would be easy for me to say that this was the most interesting part of the summer school for me, making the octopus. But in a way it was. And it kind of confirmed some of the reservations that a number of the ESRs and other contributors to the discussions have made about the very dynamic of the summer school itself. That there's been less focus on practice and making than on the conceptual frameworks that determine making. Now, I'm not going to undermine everything I've just said in my presentation. Of course, conceptual frameworks and making are indivisible. But for a brief moment in that workshop, in the making of these octopi, making became a kind of exalted state. It became not just fun in the obvious sense, but a moment of actually, I would say a moment of critical and practical, or theoretical and practical intersection, when in the doing of something, you don't just complete a task, you actually you energize yourself. So what was evident from the activity in the workshop was this sudden uplift in energy. And I hope that occurred in other workshops, in other discussions as well. So I would say that, for me, that was one of the best moments of the summer school. And I think that's intriguing, because initially I didn't want to do it. And I have to confess, I did leave one of the other workshops because I didn't want to participate. It was, as I said to it was Sunshines actually. I said it was too horizontal for me. There was too much lying down. So I broke with my resistance, and in breaking with my resistance, of course, and this is no big deal. In doing that, you find access points to other affects and forms of engagement. So I think that's that's an interesting lesson. It's a lesson I wanted to communicate with you over and above my analysis of the present conditions of socially engaged art, because I think they are interactive. They are connected and they're interactive.
Welcome to harmony.
So I've ended on a note of harmony when I didn't really want to, but I think this. I mean, I think this. And this goes to some of the bigger issues that we've been dealing with around care. Care has been now, I think, at least for the last 2 or 3 years, one of the key determinants of socially engaged practice, because care, of course, offers forms of respite, harmony, reconciliation, affirmation that direct political engagement doesn't, because direct political engagement, of course, is involved in division or attempts to supersede division, exclusion, and so forth. And in one of the workshops that I attended with Bjorn, there's a very interesting discussion around care and antagonism, or recognition of antagonism, particularly in relation to, historically, to politics in the 20th century, certainly within the workers' movement, where care was indivisible from a recognition of antagonism, because care was about protecting the collective interests of workers. So it was care was a response to antagonism, not an avoidance of antagonism. And in the discussions that we had, I think the debate on care and practice can be enriched by that. I don't know whether these issues around care and antagonism and division came up in other sessions, but it was certainly that was one of the most fruitful and productive discussions that I had in the workshops. Do you want to?
You finished?
No, I'm not finished. I'm like, but I'm offering you an opportunity to come back. I do feel slightly coerced into this, even though a lot of jokes have been made about me saying I'm the project manager. Hello, I'm the project manager. I'm John. I'm the project manager. I can solve your problems. I can't solve your problems, and in a way, I can't produce the perfect overview, because, of course, my overview will be perspectival and limited. What I can do is, I think, throw up those issues, those conflicts, those problems that I think we've all shared at some level across the workshops and discussions, and that have been offered up as points, contentious points of discussion in the keynotes. And these are to do with, I think, the very terms under which we are, as I said in the presentation, the very terms under which we're labouring. So what is socially engaged art now? What is sustainability now, in reality? What function can the art institution play now?
Let me just say a few words. Before I came to this university, I learned one thing, and you remind me on this. The best manager is a problem provider. And, you are someone who has an inspiring skepticism. And I would say that this conference will not be like it was, or like it is, still is, without this permanent skepticism. And that's why I think Elke asked me about the term wrestling. Did we wrestle about the conference? We definitely did. We thought about certain formats, whether they would work out or not, and you were always a skeptical one. But I...
So was Rahel. Rahel was skeptical as well, in her own way.
Rahel was the one who always had these lists, and how do we do it? And she is the one with whom I made every decision for the arrangement in the space and how we put every detail, because we are both totally convinced that such a summer school and such a convene has to be what Gordon Matta Clark called to convert a place into a state of mind, and to create moments, to create situations. And what you talked about, the octopus, was such a moment, I would say, that was created. And this wouldn't have been possible if you were not here, because you all contributed to these moments. And it was, for me, it was really astonishing when we invited the speakers and the people who were responsible for the workshop. We just got one rejection. It was by Grant Custer, and he had very good reasons for it, because he takes care of a child, a disabled child, and he doesn't leave the US since, I think, 7 years. And we said we don't want to do online. But all the other speakers confirmed, and I'm really, we thought a little bit about it, how far can we go in terms of flight, because of, flying guilt, how we call that in German. But I'm extremely happy that Musa traveled 10,000 kilometers to come here. and in a way it was worth it. And I'm also happy that we had 3 female keynote speakers, and it was not on purpose. We just had this topic, and we want to get the most charismatic and powerful speakers, and then it turned out they were all women. So, what else do I want to say? Yeah, I just want to throw in the term fröhliche Wissenschaft. It's a Nietzschean term, and I think we had such a moment of fröhliche Wissenschaft here, and a very, very good collective dynamic.